Have you ever noticed how heavy it feels to hold your own messy reality up against the polished surface of someone else's life? Most people do not realize that the heaviest burden they carry is not their own failure, but the illusion of someone else's perfection. In a world where every triumph is broadcasted and every struggle is hidden, it is so easy to feel like you are the only one drowning while everyone else is walking on water. If you have ever felt exhausted by the endless cycle of comparison, if you have ever looked at another person's success and secretly felt a sudden, sharp ache in your own chest, this is for you. Stay until the end, because the final lesson may change the way you see your own worth forever. 1. The invisible weight of the highlight reel. We live in an age of display. Every day, you are bombarded with images of joy, achievement, and effortless progress. You see the promotion, the perfect relationship, the beautiful journey. And in the quiet of your own room, you look at your own life. The unpaid bills, the unresolved arguments, the quiet doubts that keep you awake at night, and you wonder, what is wrong with me? Why am I so far behind? You are comparing your deeply felt private struggles to another person's carefully curated public highlights. Buddhist wisdom teaches us about the nature of illusion. Much of our suffering comes from attaching ourselves to a false reality. When you look at the surface of someone else's life, you are only seeing a projection, a shadow on the wall. You are comparing your entire, complex existence to a brief, fleeting moment of someone else's joy. This is a profound trick of the mind. We take our behind-the-scenes chaos and weigh it against someone else's opening night. Imagine walking through a dense, foggy forest at night. You have only a small lantern. The path is muddy, filled with roots and loose stones. Your feet ache and you stumble. In the distance, you see a bright, steady beam of light on a mountaintop. It looks so easy up there, so clear, so steady, but what you cannot see are the steep cliffs, the hidden traps, and the sheer exhaustion of the person holding that light. You only see the glow. You do not see the climb. This is what happens when you scroll through your feed or hear about an old friend's sudden success. You see the light on the mountain and you immediately judge the mud on your own boots. You abandon yourself in that moment. You forget how hard you have fought just to keep walking. You turn your own journey into a failure simply because it does not look like theirs. Ask yourself, how much of your daily exhaustion comes from your actual life? And how much comes from the punishing belief that you should be living someone else's? What are you afraid will happen if you stop measuring your worth against theirs? Pause. Breathe. Notice where your mind goes when it feels inferior. Observe the thought without following it down the dark spiral of self-blame. Let the feeling of inadequacy rise without making it your identity. You are allowed to be exactly where you are. You do not have to abandon your own journey just because someone else's looks smoother from a distance. But freeing yourself from this heavy comparison requires looking much closer at what you are actually envying, because beneath the surface of every perfect image is a truth we often forget to see. And this is where the next truth begins. 2. The illusion of the public self. What if the perfection you are so desperately envying does not even exist? Here is a truth few people want to face. The person you are comparing yourself to is also suffering. The tighter you hold on to the belief that someone else has an easy, flawless life, the more you suffer in your own. We move through the world looking at the polished exteriors of others. You see a coworker stepping into a new role with confidence. You see an old friend buying a home, traveling the world, or smiling brightly next to a partner. In those moments, the mind plays a cruel trick. It tells you that they have figured out a secret you are still missing. It tells you that they do not wake up with a heavy chest, that they do not stare at the ceiling at 2 in the morning, drowning in their own quiet doubts. You assume their public mask is their private reality, and in doing so, you turn them into a standard you can never reach. Buddhist wisdom reminds us of the power of illusion. We suffer because we take the mirage to be real. We look at the surface of things and mistake it for the depth. One of the deepest lessons of Buddhism is understanding that everything we see is conditioned, temporary, and incomplete. When you attach your peace to an image of someone else, you are holding on to air. You are letting an illusion dictate your worth. Imagine a beautiful, calm lake at midnight, perfectly reflecting a full moon. From the shore, the moon on the water looks solid, bright, and perfectly whole. You might desperately want to reach out and hold it, but if you dive in and try to grab it, your hands will close around nothing. You will only end up with cold water, and your own splashing will shatter the very image you were trying to hold. The reflection is real, but the solidity of it is a trick of the light. The public lives of others are just like the moon on the water. When you look at their casual conversations, their highlight reels, or their public victories, you are only seeing a reflection of a single moment in time. You are not seeing the dark depths of the lake beneath. You do not see the years of rejection, the hidden struggles, the quiet grief, or the relentless fear of failure that they carry. You only see the light on the surface. Think about your own life. Have you ever smiled warmly for a photograph while your heart was quietly breaking? Have you ever answered that you were doing fine when you were secretly falling apart inside? Have you ever projected strength just to survive the day? Ask yourself, if you have hidden your pain so well behind a smile, why do you assume the people you envy are not doing exactly the same thing? Is this comparison bringing you peace, or is it feeding your fear? Pause. Breathe. The next time you feel small next to someone else's shining moment, remind yourself that you are looking at a reflection. Observe the image without letting it diminish your reality. Stop trying to grab the moon in the water. You do not need to tear down their success to feel better about your own struggles. You only need to see it clearly for what it is, a fleeting surface, not the whole truth. Because once you realize the public self is an illusion, you can stop measuring your deeply real, profoundly messy life against a phantom. And this is where the next truth begins. 3. The danger of measuring your worth. What if the harder you try to measure your progress, the further peace moves away? Here is the truth few people want to face. The moment you place your life on someone else's scale, you have already lost. We constantly weigh our worth on a scale built by the achievements of others. You see a peer who is exactly your age hitting a major milestone. They land the promotion, they find the perfect partner, they receive the applause. Instantly, the quiet, steady progress you were making suddenly feels small. You feel like you are running out of time. You begin to panic, feeling deeply behind in life. Instead of tending to your own work, you start rushing. You abandon your own rhythm, desperately trying to force an outcome just to prove to the world that you are not failing. In trying to copy their path, you abandon yourself. Buddhist wisdom teaches us about the danger of external attachment. When you judge your own journey by looking at another person's destination, you are rejecting your present reality. You are completely abandoning the now for a fabricated should-be. Buddhism reminds us that every time we cling to a timeline that does not belong to us, we create our own suffering. You lose your mindfulness, trading your actual life for an imaginary race. Imagine two seeds planted in the same soil. One is the seed of a bamboo, which shoots up rapidly, its bright green stalks reaching the sun in a matter of months. The other is the seed of an oak tree, which spends its first years growing entirely underground, pushing its roots deep into the dark, silent earth. For a long time, the surface above the oak looks completely empty. If the oak could look at the bamboo, it might feel like a terrible failure. It might feel completely left behind. But the oak is not failing. It is simply building a deep, unseen foundation meant to withstand storms that the bamboo could never survive. It requires a different depth for a different destiny. This is what happens when you let comparison rush your life. You look at a friend, a co-worker, or a stranger on social media who has skyrocketed to success. You see their visible branches, and you curse your own hidden roots. You let the pressure to succeed tear you away from the quiet, vital work of building your own foundation. You forget that your life requires its own unique timing and its own unique weather. Think about your own life. Are you punishing yourself for growing at the exact speed you were meant to? What beautiful part of yourself are you abandoning just to keep up in a race you did not choose to enter? Is this thought bringing you peace or feeding your fear? Pause, breathe, release the heavy measuring stick. Do your part, then release the outcome. Let your roots grow in the dark without demanding immediate light. You do not have to be anywhere other than exactly where you are right now, because peace is not found in crossing the finish line first. It is found in walking your own path without wishing it were someone else's. But learning to trust your own pace is difficult. When another person's victory feels like a spotlight on your failure, how do we witness their light without letting it cast a shadow on us? And this is where the next truth begins. 4. The antidote of sympathetic joy. What if someone else's success is not a threat to your own? Here is the truth few people want to face. The bitterness we sometimes feel at another person's victory is often just our own fear in disguise. We want to be happy for our friends, our peers, and our loved ones. But sometimes, when they share good news, a dream job, a beautiful relationship, a sudden stroke of luck, a heavy, silent knot forms in your stomach. You smile, you say congratulations, but inside, you feel a hollow ache. You feel like their win is your loss. You feel like there is only a limited amount of happiness in the world, and they just took your share. The guilt of this quiet jealousy only makes the pain heavier. You feel terrible for feeling terrible. Buddhist wisdom teaches a profound concept, often called sympathetic joy. It is the deliberate practice of finding happiness in the happiness of others. But this is not about forcing toxic positivity or pretending your own struggles do not exist. Buddhism reminds us that joy is not a finite resource. When we believe that another person's success takes something away from us, we are trapped in the illusion of scarcity. Sympathetic joy invites us to realize that we are all deeply connected. Their joy does not steal your light. It simply proves that light exists. Imagine a quiet, dark room filled with hundreds of unlit candles. You are holding the only one that is burning. When another person walks up to you with an unlit candle and you touch your flame to theirs, what happens? Your flame does not shrink. Your candle does not lose its heat or its color. Instead, the entire room suddenly becomes twice as bright. The fire is shared, and the darkness retreats just a little bit more. This is what happens when you learn to truly celebrate someone else. When a friend achieves something you have been desperately waiting for, your mind tries to tell you that your own flame is going out. It tells you that their brightness makes you invisible. You see their highlights on social media, and you feel left in the shadows. But joy is not a competition. You can stand in the glow of their success without letting it extinguish your own hope. You can celebrate their victory completely while still fiercely holding space for your own waiting. You can be happy for them and still be deeply committed to yourself. Ask yourself, who is someone you have secretly struggled to be happy for? What are you afraid their success says about your own worth? Are you trying to protect your own flame by keeping the rest of the room in the dark? Pause. Breathe. The next time you feel that sudden pang of comparison, do not judge yourself. Just notice it. Let the feeling of scarcity rise without making it your identity. Whisper a quiet wish for their continued happiness and watch how it softens the tightness in your own chest. Because joy multiplies when it is shared, and peace is found when we stop hoarding it. You do not have to abandon your own needs to celebrate someone else. But what happens when you finally stop looking at their path, only to realize you no longer know how to walk your own? How do you find your way back? And this is where the next truth begins. 5. Returning to your own path. What if the reason you feel so lost is not because you are failing, but because you are walking on a road that was never meant for you? Here is the truth few people want to face. You can do everything perfectly, follow all the right steps, and still feel completely empty if you are living a life you borrowed from someone else. We spend so much of our energy observing others. We study their habits, trace their steps, and try to replicate their choices. We mimic the routines of the successful, adopt the goals of the popular, and chase the milestones that our peers applaud. Without realizing it, you silence your own inner voice to follow a map drawn by a stranger. When you do this, the exhaustion you feel is not just physical. It is a deep, quiet fatigue of the spirit. You feel disconnected from your own life, entirely untethered, because you have abandoned yourself to chase a ghost. Buddhist wisdom teaches the vital importance of direct, personal experience. One of the deepest lessons of Buddhism is that you must be an island unto yourself. You are your own refuge. No one can walk the path of awakening for you, and you cannot walk someone else's. True peace is not found by copying the steps of the person standing next to you. It is uncovered by bringing deep, unwavering awareness to where your own feet are planted right now. Imagine a powerful river flowing steadily toward the ocean. If the river spends its time looking at a nearby mountain stream, wishing it could crash wildly over the jagged rocks, instead of winding slowly through the flat plains, it fights its own nature. If it tries to aggressively carve a new path through solid stone, just because the neighboring waterfall looks beautiful and dramatic, it will only dry up in exhaustion. But when the river settles into its own natural bed, yielding to its own terrain, it moves with profound, effortless power. It does not need to be a waterfall to reach the sea. It only needs to flow. This is what happens when you try to force your life into the shape of someone else's highlight reel. You force yourself into a career that drains you, simply because it looks prestigious to your family. You chase a loud, busy lifestyle that does not fit your quiet soul, simply because it gets praised on social media. You ignore your own desperate need for rest because everyone around you is glorifying the struggle. You are a winding river, entirely exhausting yourself trying to be a waterfall. Think about your own life. Whose definition of success are you actually trying to fulfill? When you strip away the applause, the comparisons, and the expectations of everyone watching, what does your own heart actually want? Are you abandoning your own quiet calling just to win a race you do not even care about? Pause. Breathe. Bring your attention back to your own body. Stop looking left and right to see what everyone else is doing. Do not judge your own quiet stream just because the world is staring at a loud waterfall. You have permission to step off the borrowed path. You have permission to be exactly who you are, moving at the exact speed you were meant to go. Because you can never find your own true peace while trying to live inside someone else's map. But turning away from their highlight reel means you must finally face the unpolished reality of your own present moment. And this is where the next truth begins. 6. Embracing the mud of your journey. What if the parts of your life you desperately want to hide are the very things you need to grow? Here is the truth few people want to face. You cannot bloom if you refuse to get your hands dirty. We spend so much time trying to clean up our image. When things are difficult, when you are dealing with a broken relationship, struggling with your finances, facing rejection, or simply feeling utterly lost, you feel an overwhelming sense of shame. You look at the pristine, filtered lives of others, and you try to scrub away your own messy reality. You hide your failures. You pretend the pain does not hurt. You reject your own struggles because they do not look like the polished victories on someone else's highlight reel. In doing so, you abandon your own reality just to look acceptable to the world. Buddhist wisdom teaches us the profound necessity of the unpolished truth. One of the deepest lessons of Buddhism is found in the symbol of the lotus flower. The teaching reminds us that without the mud, there can be no lotus. Suffering, confusion, and difficulty are not signs that you are failing at life. They are the exact materials required for awakening. When we constantly reject our own pain and chase an artificial purity, we deny ourselves the very foundation of true inner peace. Imagine a tiny seed placed in a perfectly clean, sterile glass of distilled water. The water is clear, flawless, and beautiful to look at. But the seed will never sprout there. It will just sit, unchanging. For that seed to become a lotus, it must be thrown into the dark, murky, foul-smelling mud at the bottom of a stagnant pond. It must be buried in the dark. It must push its way through the thick, heavy dirt, fighting for the light. And when it finally breaks the surface of the water and opens its petals, it is completely pure. It owes its entire magnificent existence to the heavy dirt it came from. This is what happens when you despise the difficult chapters of your own life. You feel ashamed of your setbacks. You hide the reality of your lonely nights. You punish yourself for not being completely healed yet, comparing your raw, unfinished process to someone else's final chapter. You despise your own mud. But that very struggle, that exact loneliness or failure, is the soil that is forcing you to build deep resilience and genuine empathy. Your struggles are not a detour away from your path. They are the path. Ask yourself, what part of your current struggle are you desperately trying to hide from the world? What if this messy, uncomfortable chapter is exactly the soil you need to grow the strength you have been asking for? Are you rejecting your own growth just because it does not look pretty? Pause. Breathe. Look at the hardest part of your life right now, and instead of pushing it away, simply acknowledge it. Let the mud be mud. Stop trying to scrub away the reality of your pain before it has done its vital work. You do not have to love the struggle, but you must not abandon yourself because of it. Because peace is not found by pretending the dark dirt does not exist. It is found by trusting that something beautiful is taking root beneath the surface. But waiting in the dark is incredibly hard, when everyone else seems to be standing in the sun. And this is where the next truth begins. 7. Trusting the unseen work of your timeline. What if the silence you think is a delay is actually a profound preparation? Here is the truth few people want to face. Your life is not a schedule you are falling behind on, but a season you are quietly moving through. We are deeply obsessed with the ticking clock. You watch the calendar turn, counting the months and years, measuring them against what you thought you would have achieved by now. You see a friend celebrating a wedding, a peer launching a successful business, or a younger sibling moving into a beautiful home. Meanwhile, your own life feels like an endless waiting room. You feel stagnant. You feel like the world has forgotten you, or worse, that you have missed your chance entirely. In your desperate panic to catch up to their timeline, you force decisions, settle for less, and completely exhaust yourself, trying to sprint through a period of your life that was actually meant for rest. Buddhist wisdom teaches us about the deep rhythm of impermanence and the natural unfolding of the universe. One of the most beautiful lessons of Buddhism is that nothing in nature blooms all year long. When we attach our peace to a rigid, artificial timeline, we create our own immense suffering. We demand summer when we are standing in the middle of winter. True mindfulness is the practice of resting in the present moment, without aggressively forcing it to become the future. Imagine a magnificent ancient tree in the dead of winter. Its branches are completely bare. It looks fragile, silent, and empty. If you were to compare it to a nearby evergreen tree that remains vibrant despite the cold, the bare tree might look like a total failure. It might look dead, but beneath the freezing, hard soil, far away from the eyes of the world, the tree is doing vital, unseen work. It is drawing its energy deeply inward, resting, conserving its strength, and quietly preparing. It is not failing, it is simply in its winter. And when the spring finally arrives, it will explode into life with a quiet, grounded power. This is what happens when you panic over the quiet chapters of your own life. You are in a season of winter, a season of waiting, healing, or quietly trying to figure out who you are. But you look at someone else who is in their vibrant summer, and you immediately judge yourself. You think your bare branches are a sign of defeat. You let the heavy pressure of their season convince you that your own quiet growth is a waste of time. You forget that you cannot rush the spring, no matter how hard you pull on the branches. Ask yourself, are you exhausting your spirit by trying to force a harvest in the middle of your own winter? What if you are exactly where you need to be, gathering the quiet strength required for your next chapter? Is the pressure you feel coming from your own soul or from a clock that somebody else built? Pause. Breathe. Notice the desperate urge to rush and gently release it. Stop trying to force the door open before it is unlatched. Let this season be exactly what it is, without demanding it look like someone else's. You do not have to be in full bloom to be entirely worthy of your own journey. Peace is not found by running faster to catch up. It is found by trusting the quiet, unseen work of your own timing. But letting go of the timeline is only part of the surrender. How do we finally step off the track entirely? And what happens when we stop racing against ghosts? And this is where the final truth begins. 8. Letting go of the race. What if you simply decided, in this exact moment, to stop running? We began this journey by looking at the heavy, invisible weight of the highlight reel. We talked about that sharp, silent ache in your chest when you hold your own messy, private struggles against the carefully curated perfection of someone else's life. For so long, you have lived on a track built by the expectations of others. You have constantly looked over your shoulder, checking the speed of everyone around you, deeply terrified of being left behind. You have completely exhausted your spirit, trying to match a pace that was never yours to begin with. But here is the truth that changes everything. There is no race. There is no grand scoreboard keeping track of who healed first, who arrived first, or who looked the most flawless while doing it. Buddhist wisdom teaches us the profound peace of complete surrender. We suffer so intensely because we cling to the illusion that we are supposed to be further along. We reject our own mud, our own winter, and our own winding river because we are too busy watching someone else's lotus bloom. But the entire practice of mindfulness is an invitation to finally arrive exactly where your feet are planted. The very second you stop comparing your journey is the exact moment your true life begins. Imagine a vast, open, quiet sky. High above the noise of the world, two birds are flying. One is a small falcon, moving incredibly fast, diving sharply through the shifting wind. The other is a heron, moving slowly, with wide, heavy, graceful wings. The heron does not look at the falcon and feel a sudden rush of shame. It does not try to change the shape of its wings to match the other's rapid flight. It simply trusts its own body. It trusts the air beneath it, It knows that the sky is endlessly wide and there is more than enough room for both of them to soar. You must learn to trust your own wings. You have always had enough room for another person's light without losing your own. Think about that. You no longer have to abandon yourself just to celebrate someone else. You can smile at their reflection on the water without desperately trying to capture it. You can stand in the middle of your own quiet winter, fully trusting your hidden roots, and still sincerely applaud their vibrant summer. You can let their candle burn brightly, knowing with absolute certainty that it does not take a single spark away from yours. Ask yourself, what would your life feel like if you finally threw away the measuring stick? What would happen if you took all the heavy, anxious energy you spend observing the paths of others and quietly, gently poured it back into your own? Pause, breathe, let the silence hold you for a moment. You do not have to chase a destination that does not belong to you. Your struggles are not a sign of failure. They are the very soil of your awakening. If these lessons touched your heart, share this video with someone who may need a little more peace today. You can drop the weight now.